Okay, well, good morning everyone. It's amazing to see so many people in person. This is a good start of what will be a good couple of days on this conference. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Apidays, and this is the Architecture and Design track. I'll be the MC for the session up until lunchtime. So my name's Graham Perrins. I'm a Principal Architect at Deloitte in the Industry Solutions practice in Melbourne. It's exciting to see we've got a really good set of presenters today and some really interesting topics. So just very briefly, there's not much time between the presenters, so look, we'll have as much time as we can spare for Q&A at the end of each presentation, but we'll need to be pretty strict on the time. So if you do have questions that you don't get a chance to ask, I'm sure the presenters won't mind you finding them afterwards for any follow-up questions. If had anything more to do, there's still some seats up here. I'd like to introduce Evan, Head of Architecture from MYOB. He'll be our first presenter today. Really set of interesting topics that we have today, and Evan's going to be talking about strong and weak forces in how to align teams for domain-driven design. So everyone, please welcome Evan.
Thank you. Stunned, I was been saying this morning, this is the first time I've done a presentation or a conference talk in front of a live audience since 2019, and I'm actually really nervous. So, you know, just bear with me. I'll warm up as I go. A little bit about me. Now, here's a little bit of trivia for you. My son and I, he's 19, we ride a tandem mountain bike for our fun. A little bit of trivia. The person on the front is called a captain and the person on the back is called a stoker. That has absolutely no relevance to my talk. I just wanted to share it because it's a bit of an interest of mine. I used to say that I'm not old. I had a hard life. And that's increasingly becoming untrue. And I'm stunned to say that I've just tipped over more than 25 years in IT, which just blows my mind. And just because of the conference topic of APIs and integration, I've done everything from being mainframe DBA to multimedia CD-ROMs to data warehousing. In early days, we did lots of what we called integration work. And I was kind of harmed badly by working with Tibco and BusinessWorks and various of these integration platforms. I've been a Rastafarian bowing at the altar of Roy Fielding, and when I spent a lot of years working in consulting for ThoughtWorks and part of the team that put together the technology radar, and I was part of the effort to keep Enterprise Service Bus in hold for many years, and then watched the joys of the ESB reinvent itself through all these API management platforms that you're all so fond of, and tiered API architectures and things like that I spent a lot of time trying to unpick. About a year ago, I stepped across into MYOB as the head of architecture, out of consulting, and now I have this kind of sizable ship that I'm trying to help steer through some pretty major technology transformations. So that's fun. MYOB, everybody knows who MYOB is. It's MYOB, not MYOB, by the way. I learnt that on my first day. We often talk about it as Australia's first startup. It started 30 years ago. And to put that in perspective, I think I've been around for a while, but when MYOB started, I was a pimply, 15-year-old at high school. In recent years, MYOB's made a pretty major change from being best known for an increasingly dated and difficult to work with Windows desktop product to move to a fully online, browser-based, we still support desktop products, but cloud-connected, and move beyond those kind of core accounting features into having a much broader set of business management features that people use to run their businesses. And that has meant we're offering more features and more functionality. We have extending that out into partners and ecosystem players in a much more connected experience, creating that kind of cohesive experience for our customers, all that sort of good stuff that everybody's doing around platform. And we also need to move really fast because it's a very competitive space that we're working in. So to sum all that up, tech governance and how we approach APIs and connecting our systems and our partners is really, really crucial and a really big part of my job. So I've drawn this spectrum. I'm going to apologise up front for the crappy sketches that I do on my iPad, but you'll see more of that. So on the left is the I do what I want, don't tell me what to do, completely autonomous teams, free to make their tech decisions and everything like anything they want at any point. I'm sorry, I've got to remember to talk to the microphone or I'll get yelled at. And on the far right is the do what you're told, use these 3 technologies, follow these strict prescription for every piece of work you do, like many of my clients when I was working for ThoughtWorks. MYOB traditionally very much on the left, and a very diverse technology landscape. But like a lot of companies in the industry that have gone through that microservices explosion of fun, I'm sorry about that, I contributed to that in my own way, we're starting to pull to the right and see some targeted standardisation. But we can't do everything, all at once. So where do we focus our standardisation? I wanted to share today a little bit about MYOB and some of where we're applying our effort around standardisation. So at a high level, this is what MYOB looks like. At the top, we have these tiers of capability. We have our product features that our customers use every day. In the middle, we have our customer and business capabilities that we use to sell our products and manage our business, and then we have technology capabilities underneath. So far, just the usual layer cake. But I'll step down into the building block that we and what we use here at MYOB to describe the way our business is organised. The building block is called a domain. And it's no surprise that we call it that. It's a boundary. It's a cohesive unit of capability, product, one of those kind of areas from our tiering. And inside a domain, that represents a grouping of things. So bits of user interface, business processes, data, systems, and the people that run them. So this is your typical, you build it, you own it, you run it style thing, but within a boundary, a meaningful boundary. Examples from us, in our product space, we have inventory management domain. They deliver the product features that customers use to manage their inventory. Exciting. Always wanted a life in accounting. In our shared business capabilities, we have purchasing, which is allowing all our customers to buy our products and then get their products activated. Usual kind of domain concepts. And within those domains, we have teams. And they're your standard agile teams, DevOpsy teams that plan, build and run, support software. Having these domains and having them well defined and long-lived allows us to kind of concentrate our expertise and bring together systems and deduplicate and manage that technology estate within a meaningful business construct. It allows us to align on technology and it allows for reuse, although reuse isn't necessarily the upfront goal of the consolidation, but it is something that we get from that. We compose those domains up into what we call verticals. Everyone's sort of seeing analogies to all the different models they've seen, the Spotify model, all those things. But at MYOB, that's a vertical. Those generally relate to a customer segment, particularly in our product space. So our small, medium enterprise customers have a segment. That's a vertical. And there's leadership teams and structures at these to help people align and work towards their goals and manage the estate. The whole of MYOB is multiple verticals and then these kind of horizontals, the platforms. I won't get too much into that, but that's the kind of shape of it, and I'll come back to why that's important. You can, by the colour coding, you can roughly see there's sort of product and then customer and business in the middle and then the technology stuff at the bottom. And our organisation supports that. The reality is that everything's a bit more blurry than that, and everything kind of, but I'm an architect now, so I can't let reality get in the way of a good model. It's a bit of a work in progress. So now that I've given you a bit of the building blocks and constructs that we use at MYOB, I want to explain a bit about how that impacts the way we do governance and standardisation. And I use this analogy for a few years of the strong and weak forces that exist in organisations. And the strongest force starts when you have a team that works together every day, they have lunch together, they work under the same leadership, they're aligned on goals, they're working together. So they have a very strong force of alignment. They're going to be able to align very easily. And that same strong force applies to teams within a domain at MYOB. Same leadership, same forums, regular communication, low barrier to negotiation, and they're all us, not us and them in the context of a domain. So it makes that force of alignment works very strongly. Then we zoom out to the domains in a vertical, and that's a slightly weaker force. They'll have separate planning cadences and they'll need to negotiate over anything that they need to do together or any change that impacts across those verticals. But they have shared leadership as well who can arrange those things, and they have their shared goals and OKRs and all those things that modern organisations have to try and establish that alignment. And when you get out to all of MYOB, that is our weakest force. Like most organisations I've ever met, that's where it's hardest to get alignment because of that weak force. Now, I'll put this in the context of connecting together systems at MYOB and how we integrate and how we expose APIs. And what I've seen in the past in many organisations is this idea that you set a set of standards and you create a single platform and you have everybody adopt exactly the same method and achieve the same high bar for how we integrate systems. Loose coupling, careful versioning, strict encapsulation, but we don't have all of that universally across our existing landscape anyway, and I think that it's often very wasteful to make everybody fit into this one-size-fits-all. So at the point where we have those strong forces within a domain, and you have the same group of people who recognise themselves as us that are usually working across where systems connect together, you have this ability to lower our level of scrutiny over how systems are connected together. You don't need to negotiate a contract with someone and then retain it for a long period of time. You're usually implementing a feature that covers over both systems. You're essentially just plugging them together. I call it like this: you can allow for this productive coupling, simpler methods of hooking together systems, you have to have less emphasis on publishing schemas or making backward compatible changes or even contractual testing between systems. We even you can live with, probably wouldn't design it from the outset, but shared schemas and databases when they're within the context of systems that are owned by one crew, one domain. A real kind of example of that is that we have lots and lots of kind of message-driven and event-driven systems at MYOB in the small that use a range of different technologies. A lot of SNS and SQS, Kinesis, or whatever fits to connect these things together. The standards or the discoverability of those things is reasonably private to those domains, and those domains can work with those quite productively. Where we have the weakened forces between our domains, even if it's in the same vertical, we have to increase our level of scrutiny to how these things work together. And the domains might be operating differently in terms of the technology and the processes that they approach. They might be able to deliver at different times components of some kind of end-to-end solution without falling into like project mode. To compensate for those differences, we have to increase our level of standardisation and even how we kind of signal changes and things like that. So we talk about the domain API. The red boundary that I'm talking about here is where we're going to put our emphasis, and we're increasing this over time at MYOB to have fewer technologies and higher scrutiny around standards. Schemas, discoverability, registry in our system catalogue, managing the way we provide backward compatibility, and versioning is high. But we still, because it's within, particularly where it's within domains in the same vertical, we can still move quite fast. Rapid deprecation and then removing kind of redundant endpoints or feeds that are on our domain API. An example here is we're starting to use and standardise or towards the use of specific eventing technology. And we're trialling the use of Kafka, managed Kafka on Amazon because of its characteristics around managing schemas and wider use of events at the interface of domains. But internally, we won't be necessarily be using Kafka within the domains, but at the domain API, we're looking towards that, still in assess mode. Okay. And the weakest force when we go to MYOB wide or even out into our partner ecosystem, then we have quite a lot of organisational distance between the different domains that might be participating in connecting together systems and to deliver some useful thing. So that's the strictest in terms of versioning, backward compatibility. We actually talk about essentially, particularly if you're one of the platform areas of our organisation, if you publish something, then you might as well consider it to be forever. Your deprecation cycles are going to be very, very long. So take a lot of care around how they're presented and how you manage change in those APIs. Now, we don't always get the boundaries in the right place, especially when we're going through transformation and shifting these things. The idea that our domains will be long-lived is true on the whole, but sometimes you need to shuffle things, merge things, split things, particularly splitting things. And so that's a question I often get at this point is, if you're favouring that productive coupling within the domain boundary, what happens when we need to pull that apart because we see that they need to be split? And there will be re-engineering, and we know that up front. It's a type of debt, type of architectural debt that we're incurring by focusing on that positive productive coupling within the domain. We helped a bit by increasing our low bar and having some sort of common patterns and things like that we use even within domains, but we accept that and we think that that's the right option to take. So I've talked about these strong and weak forces. They're actually used in a number of different contexts. How we choose technology, where we're able to innovate, how we choose what to share within our organisation, and how we even work together on sort of shared code bases and things like that. Our ability to do that varies a lot according to the organisational distance and the forces that operate within our teams. Even how we make decisions on particular technologies. Who do I need to consult? Who's impacted? And different types of decisions have different blast radius, and it's often to do with these reaching parts of the organisation for which I have a weaker force will take longer to make those kind of decisions. So these are things that we try to keep in mind very much, and our model supports that. So, to summarise, one size fits all for governance and standardisation is clearly not the right thing because it can stifle our speed and innovation. As leaders in technology, we need to be aware of these forces, the organisational dynamics, and how that affects the way we run our systems and govern them and do design and change. And we should focus our standardisation effort where it matters most to help overcome the weak forces that are in our organisation. And that will lead to better outcomes and faster delivery. It really is. So that's my talk. Any quick question? Rotten tomato? Great.
That process of defining the domains and the boundaries, did that fall into a natural alignment for the business, or did it take a few iterations to get it right?
the questions about how do those domain boundaries form, how many iterations has it been? It's probably, in the time I've been here, I've seen some isolated changes, but the structure that's been set in place since around like 2019 to the early 2020, I think, is reasonably sound. We've kind of grouped a few things together and split a couple of things apart, but broadly much the same. Yes. So how do we establish standards? So we have a process. We have two things that are in place at MYOB that it would be a whole talk on their own. But one is the MYOB Technology Radar, where we look at new technologies and techniques that are incoming and promote those within the organisation. And then we have the Codex, which is our engineering handbook, where we talk about specifically defaults and standards that we use within the organisation. There are working groups that pull those together. It's still a work in progress, but that's one way. And enforcement is largely by staring at people with eyebrows. We have methods in place, and we're still working on improving the way we kind of encourage the adoption.
Yeah, with the standards adoption, is it like it's beneficial for them to not have to reinvent standards? Like, is it easy for them to choose them to not choose them?
That's very much the philosophy at MYOB is paved roads. You make it easier for people to follow the good things, the pit of success, by particularly through our platforms supporting really good patterns.
And do you experience that adoption through that sort of pull mechanism rather than push? Or does it depend on the area?
Mostly it's pull. So teams are free to do what they do, mostly with a few exceptions, a few guardrails, and so the platform teams follow the kind of the popular things. I better pop out of the way to allow the next speaker. Thank you very much.